Hello Year 9s, I hope this video is finding you well and that you've had a refreshing break during the half term. But back to the hard work, and this upcoming half term we are going to be focusing on Lord of the Flies in English. We're going to be starting off today with an introduction to A Lord of the Flies. Now, there are several slides that are going to follow that are going to be talking through the activities of the workbook. At the end of each slide, I will tell you how much time you should be spending per activity. This is just a guideline. If you'd like to spend more time, or if you find yourself finishing way ahead of the time, then that is fine and it is okay to move on. Also, before we start, this is not expected to be done all in one go. If you find yourself 40 minutes into this video and you're still only on activity 2 or activity 3, that is fine. Pause it and you can come back to it tomorrow. So, to start off with, we've got a blurb of The Lord of the Flies. Lord of the Flies was written by William Golding in 1954, and it is set at the dawn of the next World War. This is a world war that Golding has made up. It never existed, but it came about due to what happened after World War II. In Lord of the Flies, it opens with a plane crash on an uncharted island, with uncharted meaning no one has ever been there before, and this strands a group of schoolboys. At first, with no adult supervision, their freedom is something to celebrate. This is far from the civilization, and the boys can do anything they want, and they take anything quite literally. They attempt to create their own society but fail in the face of evil, sin, and terror. As order collapses, as strange howls echo in the night, and as terror begins its reign, the hope of adventure seems as far from reality as the hope of rescue. Now, this is where we find the boys for the entirety of the novel. The key themes that we'd like to identify straight away from this blurb is looking at the idea of civilization, evil, sin, and terror. So keep those ideas in your mind as we work through these next few activities. So, to start off with activity 1, you will find a plot summary on pages 3 and 4 of the workbook that should also have been sent to you. This is quite a long plot summary, so I could recommend that you read through the entirety of the summary first before attempting to actually look at the task. This will help you just to realise what's happening throughout the novel, and it might start embedding some information into your mind. Then, once you've read through it once before, read through it again in exactly the same amount of detail and try to identify at least 10 key plot points. This is purely up to you which plot points you would like to choose, but as an example, the first one has been highlighted for you. When you are underlining these key plot areas, try to be making sure you're getting a range of the entire novel. So don't underline 10 in the first paragraph because that is pointless. Instead, try to make sure you spread them across the entire novel. Then, as a challenge, you can also go back over the 10 and try to explain why you have picked them. So for example, if you have picked the one that we picked at the beginning, which was highlighting the idea of Ralph and Piggy blowing the conch to try to attract the other boys, could you explain why you have chosen that? So for example, the reason I would have chosen that is because it's what gets the boys together for the first time. I recommend you would spend at least 10 to 15 minutes on this activity. Next, we have got activity 2. This is a plot comprehension quiz. What we would like you to do, just work your way through all 20 questions and answer them in full sentences. Nice and simple. If you find yourself struggling with any of the answers, just go back over the plot summary and make sure that you're reading it through properly to check for the answers. Activity 3 is focusing on key themes. Now, These key themes run throughout the entirety of the novel and will keep cropping up time and time again. It is important that you therefore know what these key themes mean. So all we'd like you to do is get a dictionary or go on the internet, type it in on Google and define these key terms. We can recommend you spend about 10 minutes doing this. For activity 4, you will now see that there are some key terms or all the key themes on your page of your workbook. What we would like you to do now is to go over these key terms and could you please annotate them for areas of the plot. So for example, for primitivity, we have gone through and talked about Jack and the hunter's obsession with killing the pig. This is primitive because it's quite a caveman-like activity to be trying to do for the boys. Then, as a challenge, if you could then also explain why this might link to the theme, that would be excellent. This should take you a bit longer, and I could recommend spending at least 20 to 25 minutes trying to identify the perfect plot points and annotating them on. For activity 5, we have got a storyboard. This is a slight change of pace just to make sure that we're consolidating all of the knowledge that you have built up so far. What we would like you to do is pick 6 key plot points now. So for example, you've picked 10 in your original activity, and then beyond then you've started to go into them in more and more detail. We now would like only 6, and could you then draw out what's happening in each plot point and then annotating on in the little box which plot point it is, so what happened in the story. As a challenge, if you would like to explain why you chose each of these 6, that would also be excellent. I could recommend you spend again between 20 and 25 minutes on this activity. For activity 6, we've got some more key terms. Now, these aren't as key as the themes, but they are things that will be cropping up over and over again throughout the novel. And if you don't know what they mean, then you'll struggle when reading it. Therefore, again, what I'd like you to do is write the definitions into the key areas in the table. However, I've already written out the definitions below the table for you. Your task is simply to make sure that the definitions match to the correct term. If you are struggling with this, make sure that you go back over a dictionary or go through Google it on the internet and see if you can add in the correct terms. I recommend you spend again about 10 minutes on this. For activity 7, what I would like you to try and do is an evaluation. Now, I know there has not been much time spent on the characters in lots of detail, so this is purely based on your opinion, and there is no real wrong answer here at this point. It's just to see what kind of people you think the characters are going to be. So what we would like you to do is make sure you try to figure out who you personally think would be the best leader on the island based on the images given both in the workbook and on this slide, as well as the information you've learnt in the plot summary. So for example, as it says in this image here, Jack is very charismatic. If you think that would make him a good leader, and if you having looked at the plot, think that he is charismatic, you could write in, I believe Jack will be the most powerful or the best leader because he is charismatic, as shown when. Make sure that you include an area of the plot as evidence for this. You don't have to agree with me. You might not think Jack's the best. So make sure you're picking which character you think would personally make the best leader and why. I could recommend taking your time over this, so spending about half an hour, that's 30 minutes, giving this a go. Finally, we've got activity 8, which is a creative write. What I'd like you to do is pretend that you are one of the boys who has been stranded on the island. This can be with the boys, or you can be completely on your own. It is up to you. I would like you to spend between 30 minutes to 40 minutes writing a diary entry on your first day on the island. On this, you can include a variety of different things. So if you look at the slide, we've included some animals that you might see, some things that you might be doing, or some inspiration there for you. So for example, as you should know from the plot summary, the boys set the island on fire. Is this something that happens in your entry too? If you are struggling with this, on the next slide, there is some help for you. So if we're looking at this slide, on this left-hand side, we've got some vocabulary for the kind of things that you could be using in your diary entry. So for example, barren, meaning there's hardly anything there. Perhaps you've chosen a desert island where there are no trees, where the water might be quite far away. You've landed right in the middle of the island, so it's barren, there's nothing there. Remote, meaning you're in the middle of nowhere. Volcanic, so like on the island with the boys, there could be a big mountain with a volcano there. Up to you. In the middle, we've talked about the senses. In your diary entry, don't just say what you see. Talk about what you might hear, what you might smell, even what you might taste, so maybe the salt that's in the air. Try to make it as varied as possible. And with that in mind, on the right-hand side, we've got what is a preposition. Have a look at this, because prepositions are really good ways of talking about what's around you, or in front of you, or behind you, and it really paints an image in the reader's mind, as well as then also making sure that you vary the starts of your sentences. These are just a few examples of the things you could be using. We'd also like you to try and include similes, metaphors, personification. Could you try and get in some more imagery of any kind, so like some hyperbole, some onomatopoeia, anything that really makes the story quite interesting and diverse and unique. Like I said, spend between 30 minutes to 40 minutes on this. So that is the end of this week's lesson. Next week, you'll be focusing on context. I hope that you've enjoyed the start to The Lord of the Flies, and like me, you're really looking forward to what comes next. Good luck, have a good week, and we'll see you next week.